But there was one statistic in particular that just blew my mind and I think really has stuck with me. And it said that the average adult spends 2 years of their life hungover.
What? Hilary Sheinbaum, my new friend and lifestyle expert and author. Thank you for coming on Soberness.
Thanks for having me.
There's so many questions I have for you, mostly because we generally talk to people who are like, have been in the trenches and are clawing their way out and want to get sober. However, I realize there are so many, many ways that somebody can want to get their life under control, and it doesn't have to mean complete abstinence. So I love what you're doing. You've written The Dry Challenge, How to Lose the Booze for Dry January, Sober October, and any other alcohol-free month, as well as you have your Going Dry workbook out. So lots to discuss.
Yes.
Okay, first, how did you even get involved? You're not a person that had to quit drinking, like myself, for example. So how did you get interested?
It's a funny story. Definitely happened by accident. But I'm going to take you back to 2016 and start from there. So at the time, I was a red carpet reporter. I was reporting on everything entertainment and interviewing all the celebs. I'm sure we've interviewed many of the same people. And most of my jobs would start at night because those are evening events. So during the day, I was writing about booze. A lot of food and beverage, but mostly cocktails, wine, beer, etc. And I was going to these events where there was top shelf liquor and champagne that was just, served here and there and everywhere. And also as a 20-something, just like, dating and hanging out with my friends. Everything involved alcohol. So at the end of that year, I actually had dinner with a friend, and he asked me if I had any New Year's resolutions. I said no, because I think they're silly. You can start any time to make a change. And he brought up this thing called Dry January, and I immediately changed the subject because it didn't align with my life at the time, my work, my social life, my dating life, etc. And we just kind of went on with our dinner and forgot about it. And a week later, on New Year's Eve, I was tipsy at a party, and I texted him Happy New Year, and I proposed that we make a bet to see who could actually accomplish a Dry January. And so that's how it started. He thought his odds were great because I was always out and about, and I thought my odds were great because he was my plus one, and to all these parties, I knew how he was. But in the end, I won the bet. I went a month without drinking, and he lost. And as cheesy as it sounds, it just changed my entire life, including, just my work. Obviously, I'm not writing about booze anymore. My health, my sleep was significantly different, and even my relationship now. So, it's been a wild ride. It's been almost 9 years since that first January. So.
Wow. Now, since your friend was the seed of the idea, do you split half your proceeds with him?
No, he wishes. I did, however, dedicate my first book to him. So in the end, I say that we both won, even though the premise of our bet was that he had to buy me dinner anywhere in New York City, and it was not an inexpensive bill.
Yeah. Well, listen, everybody likes to have a book dedicated to them, but everyone really likes getting money. I'm just saying Hilary Sheinbaum.
I mean, I've definitely gifted him, and also I've told this story 100 times. He's basically, everyone knows Alejandro, but yeah.
It's okay. You don't have to give him your money. You
can have all my money.
So you were someone who sounds like who drank moderately,
yes,
not to excess, and even that, once you stop drinking at all, or for months at a time, so even drinking moderately kind of worked against you, it sounds like.
I think that until I really pulled back and had zero alcohol for those 31 days, I wasn't aware of how it was affecting me, because it was just so much a part of my diet and my environment that even if I went, 3 or 4 days, or I didn't drink during the week but went out on the weekends, I didn't give it enough time for it to make an effective change that I could see or feel. So I always say, the biggest, change for me was my sleep. And as somebody who, lives in New York, is busy, is stressed, works in news, was like, oh my gosh, my deadlines, what's breaking, all these things. I just thought I was a naturally anxious person, which occasionally I am, but truly, I was getting 4 to 5 hours of sleep. every night. And
Yeah.
when you compare that to, 7 to 8 hours where you feel well rested and you have more energy and your mood is just better, it just is such a difference.
Now, how did not drinking create more sleep? Just that you had better sleep, or you weren't out there boozing it up so you could go to bed earlier?
I think both. I still actually went out a lot. Like I would go to the bars, have a Diet Coke, have, the bartender mix up some concoction that I just like made up in my head. But essentially, even if I was, going to sleep at midnight, I wasn't waking up in the middle of the night because alcohol has, it tends to sedate you and then it'll just kind of wake you up when you don't want to.
Right.
So, yeah.
How did your relationships change once you stopped drinking with your family, with your friends? For me, I ended up downloading a lot of people because I was no longer that interested in what they were saying, and I think I wasn't as interesting to them.
I 100% agree. I think that it definitely changed my friendships. Certainly the ones that, were true friendships and we had things in common and we bonded over, whatever it was, workout classes, like TV, etc. Like that was still strong, but I definitely, didn't see as many people anymore because I wasn't going out, and that was really what bonded us together was, drinking together. So unfortunately, no bad blood, just we didn't have anything in common anymore. So
Was there a particular dinner or meeting someone after work where you thought it would be just as groovy, and then you sat down with your seltzer and they had a Manhattan and you're like, wow, this is really boring?
yeah, I don't know. I feel like there's probably a few of those. I think for the most part, though, people either were very supportive or they just didn't understand what I was doing. So a lot of the conversation wasn't even about being bored as much as it was sometimes feeling a little bit attacked, which was hard at first, but yeah.
Say more. What do you mean attacked?
Yeah, so like a lot of times I didn't know what I was doing, right? Like it was my first dry January. Even when I went home that night at like 2 a.m., I still had bottles of wine, in my apartment. I had, stuff in the fridge, like who knows? And there wasn't a playbook. I was just learning as I went along. So when people would ask me like, why are you doing this? Like, do you have a problem? Like, are you pregnant? I felt like I was almost on the defense, like explaining to them, I don't know what I'm doing, but I just want to see what happens. Yeah. And I think even more so, people became more supportive when I told them I had a bet that I couldn't lose. Like that's when I think it became more of like a positive. They were like, we're getting behind you on this.
That's interesting. So now you know how it feels.
Yeah.
When people look at you and think you have a problem. And in my case, I do have a problem. I'm not good at drinking. I've never been good at drinking. And interestingly, I feel like I do have to lay that out for people so that they get less defensive. Before someone really knows the story behind why you're drinking, I have found people take it like you're condemning their drinking.
100%.
Listen, y'all, I don't care. I don't give two whatevers that you don't drink. Don't drink, drink. I could care less. For me, it was about me not drinking. And it sounds like in your case, until you decided to go write these couple books about it, it was just for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. I honestly, the first time that I did a dry January, figured that this was going to be a one-time thing. I would never think about this again. Now I think about it every hour of my life because it's become such, a big part of what I do and also like who I am in the strangest way. Yeah.
Interesting you say that because my first almost 10 years of being sober, I just put on the blinders. I wasn't in any kind of recovery. I just didn't drink anymore, and I'm not going to think about drinking. I'm not going to talk about it, and that's how it was. And then I started reading memoirs about people who'd been drinking. I started talking to other recovering alcoholics, and suddenly now I'm talking about booze all the time. And the unhappy result of that for me is like now I'm thinking about it.
Right.
And I'm missing it a little bit. Do you find you're missing it as you're sort of, going about it the way you have, studying it, writing about it? Do you find that you also miss drinking it?
No. I mean, I think that as long as there's options, like, at a bar, or I feel like I'm still, with the group, like doing the same things, I don't miss it. I think that also, like, when I do drink, because I'm not 100% sober, it's typically to compare, like, non-alcoholic options to the traditional, drinks that, people know. So I can, give an honest opinion and say, like, here's the replacement for XYZ. But no, I don't know. I think it's made such a like profound impact on so many parts of my life that like last year I ran the New York City Marathon, and I always say like not in my wildest dreams could I have ever done that if I was even hungover, one weekend, because every weekend leading up to that counts. And so I don't know. There's just been so many other positive changes that it doesn't. Yeah, I'm never like, all right, like let's go crazy. I'll go out, like I'll go crazy. I'll have an energy drink instead. But
You're wild.
I'm so wild,
nuts with that energy drinking that you do. So what was your process with writing the book? Did you speak to physicians, nutritionists? How did you end up coming up with your prescriptions for a more sober life?
So for the dry challenge, it was a lot of just trial and error, I think, on my part. After, my first year, where I think I learned the most, just going into it so blindly and just like seeing what happens. And, since then, like this coming January will be my 9th dry January, but I've certainly done a number of months in between. And there's definitely a lot of stats and, interviews, even from dermatologists who talk about how alcohol affects your skin. But there was one statistic in particular that just blew my mind and I think really has stuck with me, which it was done by like a supplement company in the UK. And obviously in the UK, the drinking age is a little bit, lower. They start drinking at 18. And this was from years ago too. And it said that the average adult spends 2 years of their life hungover.
What?
Yeah.
Wow, that's really heartbreaking.
And so that to me was just so, like, for lack of a better word, just crazy. Like, why are people, spending their time just feeling nauseous or sick or like unable to work? And with, especially as a New Yorker, I know that you can relate to this. We're so like type A and like want to get stuff done and be productive and, reach our goals. And like that in itself is just kind of wiping away your days. So, I don't know. When I think about stuff like that, I'm just like, nah, I'll have like maybe like a half a glass of wine, but I'm not going off the rails.
Have you done everything in your book, in your workbook? Have you done all the things that you're asking people to do?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, that's actually a good question. I think there might be one or two things where I'm like, here's a suggestion, because for example, like living in New York, one activity that I say like people can do if it's available to them is like, for example, water sports. I am not recommending anybody like go hang out like in the middle of the East River or like, go swimming. But if you live in Florida, where I used to live, then yes, do that. So as silly as that sounds, I'm not doing that.
But you bring up a good point, because when I first got sober, and I think for a lot of people who spent a lot of hours drinking, the biggest question is, what am I going to do with the time?
Yeah.
What do I do with myself? What do I do with my hands? What do I do with my time? So what do you suggest people do with their hands and their time?
Literally everything that you have been wanting to do. Like, we talk so much about how there's so little time in our day to like see our family, spend time with people we love. I mean, so much of our time now is also taken by like social media and scrolling. And I think that when you cut out booze, like it just opens up that time. But like everybody has their own individual things that they're dying to do or try or plan. And so I think that's another part of it is, even when you make plans to go do things, those things cost money, and cocktails are not inexpensive. So it goes hand in hand with whatever it is that you've been dreaming of doing. Maybe it's like taking that amazing trip or, running a marathon if you're crazy like me. Just, putting that time into yourself.
What are the questions someone should be asking themselves before they embark on a dry January or sober October?
So I have to say that doing a dry month is not a replacement for a recovery program or, going to AA or talking to your doctor. So I think that is something that people need to first decide and figure out. But I think really dry months are otherwise for everyone. I think that even if you have something on the calendar, let's say, I always use like weddings as an example because there's often open bars and people like to get wild. But I say like even if you have a birthday or wedding or a celebration coming up, you can call it, a one drink January and just like move on and, start again, like be kind to yourself. It's not an all or nothing process, which I think a lot of people get hung up on. So yeah, I think anyone can do it.
And how many months at a stretch do you generally go?
It depends. I'll go as far as like 6 months, but typically, like I said, if I have a sip or two here, then if I'm, trying to explain like what kind of wine this non-alcoholic version, that I'm trying tastes like, there's that. So absolutely nothing. I would say like 6 months, but yeah, and that's usually in like my like off season, which is
And what do you find the appetite is across the country? I know you do events all over the country. Even I saw Hawaii.
Yeah.
Right? So how much appetite is there for people to have completely dry events?
I think that, in current day, that people are still obviously drinking, but they're looking to drink less. And I think that people are just really interested in meeting other people, bonding, sharing those same social experiences, or even dining experiences, or just like life experiences just without alcohol. And it's so like common. I mean, we don't even think about how often alcohol is available, right? It's at sports games, it's at birthday parties, it's at weddings, it's part of funerals. Like every aspect of life and death, there is a drink available. So I just think that like people are looking for these opportunities to experience everything just without booze. So yeah, have had like tons of events in New York, in LA, in Charleston, in Nashville, a lot of drinking cities.
Yeah.
I'll be going to Boston next month. So yeah, I think that, it's exciting.
Do you feel like it would be easier for people to just never start drinking than to have to give it up for a month here and there?
It's interesting. I don't know. I think, it's hard to say. Probably. But I think that, people are just like naturally curious, right? They want to do what their friends are doing and try new things. And I don't know. I wish I had an answer for you. Like, I feel like that would be a really interesting experiment.
But who's going to be willing to do it,
I don't know.
For people who want to give up drinking altogether, if somebody knows it's really not for them, it's not working out, is your program, your book, a good first step toward complete sobriety, or for you it's a completely different lane?
I would suggest like speaking with a doctor or a medical professional, both of which I am not. However, I do know people who have, read the Dry Challenge and, have come to events and said that they drink either significantly less or they've given up alcohol completely after doing, 1 month, just because they've become accustomed to it and they feel great. But it's really not a recovery program, just because I'm not a doctor. So yeah.
Got you. Fair enough. And for people who do want to quit, have had a hard time with it, do you offer any advice in your book of next steps? You said talk to a doctor, but is it, once again, like lifestyle wise, exercise more? What do you recommend, since you've seen such positive things in your dry months?
Yeah, I think, finding things to, occupy your time. I think exercise is always, a good option, especially because it creates endorphins and you'll feel happier and, maybe have a new hobby. I think that it's also important to really gather friends who support you, because even during like my dry month, even though my friend and I were kind of at competition with each other, we had each other to really lift each other up and support each other and vent to each other and make plans with each other. So I think just having somebody who maybe understands what you're going through, or at least can, be somebody that you can spend time with, perhaps if, your friends or family are consistently drinking. I think that's a really good piece of advice. And I would also say just, eliminating any kind of triggers. Like even for people who are doing a dry month, I say, put your booze in like, I don't know, a pantry or something, like something out of sight, out of mind. Like you don't want to be walking past your bar cart like 12 times a day thinking about it.
Yes.
So, I mean, I also say you can pour it down the drain if you'd like.
I was just going to say, right.
It's also an option. Not
Yes.
many people do, but
Right.
I'm here for it.
Right. Right. It's hard when you really love something. It's hard to pour it
and when
down
you've
the drain.
spent so much money on it too.
100%. Do you ever miss the bonding that can take place among drinkers? Because that's the one thing that I really I miss at the end of a day. Hey, let's get a drink. You know, it doesn't have the same. It doesn't have the same appeal. You're like, let's get an oolong tea. Like, that's not fun.
I think it's really about finding an activity where you and whoever you're with, like, is really enjoying it. For example, there's a place in Financial District called Court 16, and you can, hit tennis balls. And my friend and I went at, 9 a.m. and you can have a full conversation because you're not running up and down the court. And catching up, and we left. It was her first time there. She was like, "This was so much fun. Like, let's absolutely do this again." She said it, better than drinking.
Okay.
So I think that.
Well, most things are better than drinking at 9 a.m. If you're
Yeah,
drinking at 9 a.m.,
well,
we've got other things to discuss.
We do. But point being that I think it's really just about finding activities and things that you love to do together, and also, when you first said that, like, I don't miss the next day, even if I wasn't hungover, just having that anxiety of thinking, oh my gosh, did I say something wrong? Or, did I misinterpret some words? Or, did they think I was saying X, Y, and Z? And so that I absolutely do not miss.
Are there any upsides you were expecting that never came to pass?
Oh, I think the most common question people ask me after, like, what changed? They'll say, did you lose any weight? And I'm like, no, I did not, because I replaced my booze with tubs of ice cream.
Yeah,
So
that'll
even
do it.
though, I wasn't drinking 400-calorie margaritas, I was definitely indulging in pints and pints of ice cream.
Got it. So this is not a weight loss program necessarily.
Not for me, at least. No. I think that, if you're in a calorie deficit, obviously, and booze is a big part of that, then yeah, you can potentially lose weight. That did not happen for me.
That didn't happen for you. But we gotta replace it with, everybody needs something. The idea of like a totally sober life, sober from everything, sugar included, is super foreign to this reporter, but I admire people. I guess I admire people that can do it. I don't know. I'm not sure. The truth is, I've never really considered like a completely ascetic life, where you're not indulging in booze or weed or sugar. I mean, for me, sugar would be really hard to give up.
Yeah, especially because people don't realize how much sugar is in alcohol.
Every damn thing, yes.
Yeah, like cocktails. They say, oh, I don't like sweet cocktails, but once you eliminate it, you're going to have those sugar cravings because you're not, getting that anymore.
I'm sure you're asked this all the time, but is this like a slow march towards you giving it up once and for all?
Maybe. I think at this stage, I love comparing like the non-alcoholic version, so it doesn't make sense for me, just so that I can, in an educational fashion, explain to people what is comparable, but maybe. I mean, it's definitely not such a big part of my life as it was back in the day. Like, I mean, truly, when my friend first brought up the topic of dry January, I was like, who are you? Like, what are we talking about? Do you know who you're speaking with? Yeah.
You've been doing it for 9 years. Does it get easier the older you get because social pressures are different?
I think so. I think also after that first month, I mean, transparently, I, had a drink on February 1st, and the second year had a drink on February 1st.
How does it taste?
It didn't feel good. The morning after was probably one of the worst. But at this stage, it'll go into January. It'll go into February. It'll go into March. It'll go into April, and I just won't even realize because I've just become accustomed to it.
Do you reward yourself?
Do I reward myself? No, I don't think. I mean, I think there are ways that I make suggestions in my books. I think I've rewarded myself in not by purchasing anything, just more of just acknowledging that this is so good for me, and I think as corny as it sounds, like that's the reward in itself. Just feeling like, wow, my skin is clearer. I'm in a great mood for no reason at all. I slept really well. I didn't spend money on cheese fries at 3 a.m. Like, I think that is all like, yeah, I think that's a good one.
Yeah, and the confidence anybody gets by accomplishing anything,
Yeah.
you know, so the not drinking, that's a huge accomplishment in itself, whether or not you have a hardcore problem or a softcore problem or not a problem at all, but you just, you know, the decision to do something, setting the goal and accomplishing it is huge. And then, like you said, the things you pile on top of that, whether it's a marathon or having so much money left in your savings account or whatever it is, it is definitely a recipe to feeling great about yourself when you might not have, just by trudging along a regular New York City life, which, like you said, can be really booze infused.
Absolutely. I was going to ask you, did you, like, was there a benefit that never came for you?
This is my interview, Hilary. You don't get to know.
I want to know.
Say it again.
I know, sorry. It's my, this is my natural, my journalist coming out. Was there a benefit for you that, like, never came to realization that you thought was going to happen?
Well, the weight loss.
Yeah.
Again, I don't know, you know, I mean, I was drinking quite a bit, and when I stopped, I didn't get super skinny. So there was that didn't happen. That's a great question. I'm so glad I came up with that question.
Yeah, you did so well.
Let's see. Is there anything that didn't happen? Well, it's complicated because as an alcoholic who spent so many years drinking and blowing things up here and there, there's a lot of guilt and shame that goes along with my experience as a drinker. So guilt and shame, while you may not be adding to it with new drunken escapades and mornings after, you're still dragging around the boatload of guilt and shame you have accumulated. So I am grateful to not be adding to that debt, but it's a lot of work to untangle it. And that did not clear up overnight. But I will tell you, so, you know, you've been doing your dry Januaries for 9 years. This Sunday I'll be 11 years sober. And thank you. Sober from alcohol. And I think the benefits actually are now really starting to kick in. Long-term sobriety offers an incredible amount of gifts to someone like me who spent so long dedicated to my drinking career. You know, I've been very career focused my whole life, right? Whether it's journalism, drinking, you know, I've been very focused.
Yeah.
And so to not have the burden of, all the things that go along with drinking, just mostly the drama that I caused for no reason. And to not have that has been amazing. But I thought it was going to kick in much sooner.
Yeah. It's almost like, you know, I think, like, looking back at it, I thought that in 30 days I was going to be like a brand new person. I was going to, you know, walk around in my matching yoga set and never lose my keys and, like, have perfect hair. And, like, I was going to be, like, the Instagrammable wellness person. And I'm not. And, like, that's okay.
You're still you.
I'm definitely still me. But I did, like, you know, I did have clearer skin. I did, you know, learn a lot. I did have, I think, better connections with friends. And there were so many benefits, just not the ones that I thought that were going to, like, be so, like, look at me now. Like, I've lost 5 pounds. Like, absolutely not. But
where the hell would you lose 5 pounds from?
I don't know. My ankles, maybe.
Annoying. All right. Well, with that, thank you so much for filling us in. I think a lot of people can benefit from drinking a little less.
Yes, I agree.
So if you want to drink a little less, call her. If you want to drink a lot less or not at all, call me. Thank you. Thank you.